We did it.
I'm just gonna hit record the whole
Why
time
would
because
we?
I figured out how to like cut parts of it out so that we don't have to go in and out.
Oh, nice.
Good job, Heather.
Yeah. How's things going well?
Yeah, just in between this and have a guy coming for an appraisal at 2:30 for a refi and then another meeting after that. So, and then my parents decided they're coming tomorrow for the rest of the week. So I got to do all the house cleaning and stuff. So that's,
Got a busy one. I say, other than the world falling apart, I'm doing great.
is
It's kind of been my slogan for the day.
it just today it's falling apart or is it just in
Yeah,
general?
it's to be seen.
Oh, okay.
We'll see. All right, Heather, take us away. We're here to make some stuff happen.
Okay. Let me write this down so I don't forget again. Mindful money matters.
What do you think of my new background?
I love it. And it looks nice with your shirt.
I know,
Very
right? I
sweet.
planned this.
Yeah.
And now I feel like last man standing because Zach, you have green on too.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's the first thing I pulled out of the closet. In fact, I
You
need to
got green
hide that.
behind you, Heather.
I need
What?
to blur that logo because that's my old company in there. So
Yeah, I see
Oh,
that.
yeah, Country Financial.
yeah.
Okay. So welcome back to Mindful Money Matters. I'm Heather Winandy with Mentor Me Advisors, bringing back Cheryl Romanowski and Zach Youngblood of the Youngblood Group to talk to you about Mindful Money Matters. And something that I want to touch on recently, because Zach and I have been going back and forth for weeks and weeks and weeks, is 401ks. So Zach has been helping me with my 401k for the last few years, and also looking at investing in other opportunities to get me set up for retirement. But it makes me think about how much time I've put into building a 401k, extracting it, letting it sit, moving it around, and that many people might not know like Cheryl said a few weeks ago when we talked, what even is a 401k? Why someone would want to invest in it? And then what you can do with it beyond letting it just sit there. And since we're in an upheaval of financial changes in the market right now, I thought this would be a great opportunity for you to share with us at younger ages why we should even consider getting into 401ks. And then as we go through our careers, especially now with people coming in and out of different companies, where historically people went and worked at one company and stayed there for 40, 50 years, people are moving back and forth. So if they're considering, well, I'm not going to buy into a 401k because I'm not going to be here, but not understanding that it actually can travel with you. So do
Right.
you want to get started on that?
If I could add something, if just how much should we be putting in there? Is there a certain like golden number percentage that is kind of the sweet spot? I'd be curious
Yeah.
about that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, the first answer to the first question, but the reason they call it a 401k is that's actually a section of the tax code where they
Oh,
marked it
Okay,
out.
now we know.
And it's the same thing with a 403b and a 457 plan. And
yeah.
the IRA actually is a 408 plan. They just call it an IRA. But anyway,
And my husband had a 401R at one point. I think it was 401R, but that was
yeah.
his own retirement plan that he was contributing to without any support from a company.
Yeah, yeah. The 401 in general is, or the 401k is typically is company sponsored. So that's the first thing is you have to have a company sponsor the plan. And by sponsored, it just means that they're signing off on it, saying, okay, we've approved this platform, we've approved the investments, we've approved the money manager, and we're going to allow you to contribute on usually a pre-tax basis, but now they're allowing it to do after tax, and we could do an entire discussion on which one of those is better or not. But so that's really what a 401k is. It allows you to set aside money from your paycheck, kind of out of sight, out of mind. It doesn't go into your bank account. So the likelihood of you putting it away is easier. And sticking with it typically is better. And then as far as, why, if you're younger, why would you want to start? I mean, I do get that question even for people that are even older, even in their 40s, I don't know how long I'm going to be here. I don't know if I want to start. That account is yours. If you leave, you can take that with you, either move it to the new employer 401k, you can cash it out if you need to, you can roll it to your own individual retirement account. Those are the three main options that you have there, or you can leave it at that employer. But the reason you want to contribute is the biggest factor of success in hitting your savings goals, particularly the long range goals, is time. And the more the earlier you can put in that money, not necessarily the more you can put in, but the earlier you can get that money in there and leave it there, give it time to work and grow. That's why you want to start as young as you can. And then as far as how much to put in, I usually tell people at least put in up to what your company will match. Some employers will, or most employers will match 3%, 4%, 5%, 6%. And what that means is if you put in 5%, they'll give you 5% as well. So it's free money. It's 100% return on your money right there.
So just so that people understand what that is, because maybe this is completely new information.
Yeah.
So 5% of what? Your salary?
Yes, yeah.
So 5%
of
of
your
every check, or
Right.
5% per month? Like,
it'd be 5% of every check. So if you get paid twice a month, it'd be 5% of that check. So is going to be going in. Your employer, if they're matching, they'll match up to that amount.
right.
So
So people might be and maybe this is something that we can talk about as well, is from your paycheck. Okay, FICA's coming out, insurance costs are coming out. I will start with round numbers. I'm supposed to get $1,000 a month based on the salary that they told me that they're going to pay me. And so now with FICA and which is taxes, folks, for anyone who isn't sure, but taxes are taken out. Maybe you're in the health plan that's taken out. Maybe there's a dental plan cost. And you're like, and now you're going to take 5% out, but consider the fact that you'll get a match from your company potentially. So that's really just giving it back to you.
yeah.
But when it's different when you get your check and you're like, I'm going to put this in savings, but then you actually don't do it. This way, you don't even see it. It's just something that's automatically removed.
Mhm.
And it makes it easier when like every week I'm going to be getting a check for $750 instead of $1,000.
Right.
So you can plan around it.
Yeah, it's a little bit easier to stick with whenever
Mhm.
you do that. And people think, well, if I contribute to my 401k, then I'm going to be taking home less in my paycheck. Really, the math typically works out that you don't really even notice it, because again, just simplify it and say if you're getting paid $1,000 paycheck and you're putting in 5%, well, $50 of that is going to go into your 401k, and then you're only getting taxed on $950.
Mhm.
So the actual bottom line number, really, you don't even notice it.
So most of the time, I would say those are instances when someone's working for a larger organization. It's not often that you'll maybe see, or am I wrong in my assumption of a smaller family business might not offer a 401 match? So in that case, I would still say take the play of putting whatever you're comfortable with, even if it's 1%, because compound interest,
Yeah.
time over time over time, you're investing in yourself.
Yeah, and a way to approach it, I usually say is, well, dip your toe in the water slowly. Start with, they're not matching. I would say start with 3%, and then in 6 months go to 4 and 5. And so every 6 months you're going up.
Because you can
And
also take it back down too,
you
right?
can. Yeah,
You can go in. So it doesn't have to be over a life change, like someone's getting married, like with insurance. You can only really make changes on it annually when the time of the year comes around for the company to make adjustments.
Mhm.
But in a 401k, because it's your funds, you can probably make changes whenever you feel it's necessary.
Right. Yeah. And if you know you're going to be getting a larger check or a bonus of some sort, you could go in advance and say, oh, I want to put a larger percentage of that into my 401k. Again, that lowers that taxable income. It gets a larger contribution in there. And then you can go back and put it back down to where to where you were prior to that.
Yeah.
And if I could ask a question, so do you have to wait to a certain age that you can take out a 401k? Because Heather, you mentioned that you've taken some out and played around with
Mhm.
it. I mean, so I'm kind of curious how that works, and especially for young people.
Yeah.
Is there a certain age or requirement to take it out or something like that?
Well, in a perfect world, we don't ever get sick. Emergencies never happen. Nobody ever has to meet a healthcare deductible, anything like that. But so, you wouldn't touch that money until you're at retirement age. And the IRS somehow came up with this magic number of 59 and a half. I have no idea where the half came from. But what that number means is if you withdraw that money from a 401k, like you put it into your pocket, there's going to be an additional 10% penalty
Oh,
plus income tax on it. So effectively, you're going to lose about 30 to 35% off the top. Now so you want to leave it in there as long as you can, but let's say something happens and you do need to access it. Maybe you've racked up a whole bunch of debt that's costing you 20, 25, 30%, and you have this money sitting in your 401k. Sometimes it is maybe a good thing to do to take a loan from that.
Mhm.
Maybe go and pay that off, and then you can repay that loan from your paycheck.
so with the loan, you mean then you're taxed on that loan then, like you
Uh,
explained?
Taxed on the loan. Yeah,
You would
what?
get
Taxed
you would
on
get
the-
That's the
interest,
same
like
thing.
Yeah,
I know at my last company, and here's another thing that we can touch on too, because these are not simple topics, which is why we're even just starting to talk about it. Like they can go into grave detail, but to get the highlights of it, if you
Yeah.
were to take a loan out on it, in the past, I know that I had taken an interest-free loan out, but then more recently, when I went to do that, it showed a 4% interest. But even still, that's
Yeah.
less interest than it would be if I went and did a personal loan from the bank.
Right, right. Yeah, I think it depends on how the plan is set up. Sometimes, the companies can set it up a lot of different ways. But
Yeah.
that money is accessible. It just depends on what are you going to pay in penalties and interest, and that's where it helps to talk to a third party where that isn't tied to your money to say, well, let's look at the entire picture here. And is this really going to be the best thing for you to do, or is there another way to approach this?
Right. And that's where, like me, where I come from, the mentality of finding people that you can learn from, your mentors, people that can help you hold hands through the things that you don't understand is like why I came and met Zach. So Zach was at a library event and the event was on women's retirement planning. And I was like, hey, it's free. I'm going to go learn about what I can learn about. And it was great. We actually went really long in that event. And so I
Yeah.
think
You guys had a lot of
people,
really good questions in that.
yeah, there was a lot of great questions. And then I ended up moving forward and getting more information from you directly. And that's how you find people that can fill those gaps in how to help you get through life.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's important to admit, don't be afraid to ask questions about anything. I mean, I just took my daughter on her first college visit, and that was one of the things that we talked to one of the admissions counselors about is, it's a good thing to ask questions, take advantage of the office hours and all that. So yeah, whatever you don't know, seek out experts or at least people who know a little more than you in that field, and you could save yourself a lot of headache and time as well, because those people that's what they do. So they can really, it's going to save you a lot of time. Time is money and money is time. So,
Yeah. And don't feel like if you don't take advantage of it now, it's not something that you can't get into
sure.
further down in your career, or that, like I said, I've worked for many different companies and some offered 401s and some didn't. And I had one that I had decided I was going to take out and I was going to pay debt off with. And then another instance where I have some invested and some that I've taken out. So those are things that where your structure needs to be, and what you need to feel comfortable in your finances. And even, in mid-career, you can always start planning now and not think that it's too late. There's always time. Well, there's not always time, but there's no time like the present.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. And um, yeah, starting early on is always better. And I think a lot of people, they feel like when it comes particularly to overall financial planning, that's usually kind of an intimidating kind of word, but when it comes to saving or budgeting or investing or anything or planning in general, everybody wants to just hit the home run and be done with it. And they feel, sometimes I think they approach that and think, well, if I can't hit the home run on the first try, I'm not even gonna bother. Well, I'm a huge baseball fan. There are a lot of guys in the Hall of Fame that hit singles and doubles and hit 300, which means 7 out of 10 times they didn't even reach base. There's a lot of people in the Hall of Fame just hitting singles and doubles. So you start early or start when you can and just continue consistently sticking with that plan. And don't get freaked out if the market's going up and down. You're not going to time it right, and you're probably going to miss out on some really big opportunities if you do.
Right. And don't forget that age-old story of the tortoise and the hare.
Yes.
Slow and steady wins the race.
So you're hearing a lot now where people are saying that it might not be the best time to retire because of this influx of what we're seeing.
Mhm.
And I've seen this quite a lot. And I have a friend that wants to retire very soon. And I'm so curious kind of how she's feeling about this. Is there any advice maybe, Zach, you can give to people that might be retiring? They're at that 59 and a half or 65 and a half and
Yeah.
would like to
Uh,
retire.
First thing I would do is don't try to figure it out yourself. And that's not a pitch to try to get you to work with me or an advisor, but that's a massive, massive decision is to
Okay.
retire and decide now I'm going to live off this money that I save. Um, retirement comes down to a lot of different factors. So I would say, you know, talk to a professional about that. Let them know your entire situation, and figure out if it is the right time or not. Because whether you can retire or not really just comes down to, are you going to have enough income, and is the money you save going to be able to produce that?
Mhm.
And
As
with
far as the
living
right
longer,
time,
sorry.
as far as the right time, and I have people that are retiring this year that are 60, and they're able to retire because they've saved up enough. And even though the market has declined or whatever, it hasn't impacted them as much, because they've got more to work with, but also because they have adjusted things appropriately and stuck to their plan. So, but if it's somebody who is probably going to be on, you know, like a fixed income or heavily dependent on Social Security, or has not saved a lot, yeah, it may not be the right time to do it because you may need to give your money more time to grow. But when we do these, if I do a plan for somebody, usually we find out, well, really, it's only a 1 year difference. If you can work 1 more year,
Okay.
this will make all the difference in the world. If you can work 2 more years, or if you can just, you know, cut down your spending just a little bit, then this is doable. So it's not impossible.
Thank you.
Well, I think that's a great introduction to 401ks, and I'm sure we'll have opportunities to talk about more things like this. But if you have some more questions about managing your money and understanding 401ks and investing, please do look up Zach's company at Youngblood Group, the Youngblood Group, right, Zach? Do you want to provide your contact info?
Youngbloodgroup.net.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, until next time, thanks for the feedback, and I'll continue to work with you on my 401k, and we'll get that finalized soon enough.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Thanks so much. Pause. Okay.
Hang on. My phone was like,
Okay.
yeah. So, but.
Okay. Welcome back to Mindful Money Matters. I'm Heather Winandy with Mentor Me Advisors. With me today again is Cheryl Romanowski and Zach Youngblood. And we are talking today about boundaries, and that there's all kinds of levels of boundaries. Someone brought it up to me recently about setting boundaries at work and finding ways to like remain respectful, but still set your boundaries for your own mental health. And there was also another video that I saw recently that was like setting boundaries and protecting your mental health doesn't exercise your mental health, and that was intriguing to me. And so like I've never been one that really set boundaries. I always was like, sure, I'll do that, sure, I'll do that, and then I'd get burned out and I'd be like, I have to go into hiding and reset.
Yeah.
And I would do that with friends, where I would gain access to a lot of people and be invited to different things, and then I'd be like, I'm so overwhelmed
I
and I
remember
need to
that.
stop. So do you guys have any insight on that in your experiences of things that you have, ways that you've identified for setting boundaries for yourself, or that you can make recommendations for people as they learn how to set their own boundaries and navigate their lives?
If I could jump in first, you mentioned about setting boundaries at work. And
Mm,
so that kind of piqued my interest first, and the way of like, we need to know our own worth.
mm,
So we need to know what values we bring to the table. What are we good at? So spending time really asking yourself, what am I good at?
mm.
That I had a meditation kind of thing that came up, and it was asking me that question. It took me 2 weeks to figure out what I'm good at, because I'm like, okay,
And that was recently?
yeah, recently this happened. Like I know the basics of what I'm good at, but what am I good at that I'm doing really, right? And
Mhm.
I wasn't exercising, and I was a D1 player back in the day, and I always loved, working out and these kind of things, and I just wasn't doing it. So I literally walked in the gym and I was like, help me. We talked about getting like mentors and things, and I was just like, I need help. And so, I'm working with a trainer now, and every time after I do it, I send it to my loved ones, 3 of them. I send the number that I've done. So I'm at number 7 now. So now I'm writing on a piece of paper, ready to do number 8 tomorrow. So this kind of idea of like, you always talk about this, like seeking help.
Mhm.
There's
Mhm.
help for us, knowing what we're good at, and then knowing our worth, and therefore we can make our boundaries based on those factors.
And worth doesn't have to mean dollars.
Yes, we
Like
work on
you're
ourselves, right?
right. Your worth in salary is you're trading your time for what they're paying you, but your worth in yourself is your own time. Like, don't give up time to spend with yourself, just to be busy. And also, like, I know I didn't experience this because I didn't have kids, but a lot of people I know, they forget who they are because they're so focused on doing everything for everyone else.
Mhm.
Mhm, mhm.
I would agree with that. And from my own experience, I failed at setting boundaries early on, and now it's just I don't know if I really could because I've gotten so used to I can't say no.
Mm.
Well, you can always
I,
set a boundary. It might be
yeah,
hard to achieve it, but you just have to be diligent about reinforcing it.
I,
You can
I think
always change the rules.
I think it's tougher over because I don't know if I could it'd be tougher to do because I condition the people around me, like my
Mhm.
family and my friends. I've conditioned certain clients. I've conditioned them that, yeah, I'm just going to do whatever I can, whenever I can, however I can to help you. And I've tried to do that with newer clients or newer people that come
Mhm.
to my life. Like, no, this is kind of my time, and it's critical to set boundaries. And I always thought that was kind of a goofy kind of a
It's
term.
kind of a fluffy
Okie dokie
term,
kind
but
of thing.
Yeah, like what do you mean boundaries? I can do whatever I want
right.
whenever I want. And no, you need to have boundaries on your time, just like you need to
Yeah,
have it on your money because you
right.
only have so much of it.
And if I could add boundaries on your energy, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
So because you can have some time, but you might be depleted of energy.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, how do I set boundaries for myself within how much I can give?
Yeah.
Right.
Unless I'm filled up my cup, how can I then share it with you? So it's really creating boundaries is, making sure that you're okay to make
Mhm.
others
Right.
okay, right? So in every
Yeah.
the work we all do, if we're having a really bad day, we have to somehow find a way to pick that up so that we can serve others. Otherwise,
Yeah, and you might disappoint people in the process, but if they're the right people for you, they'll understand. Like
Mhm.
I've found more recently, historically, I overextend myself. And it'll be to the point where I'll be in 10 different places in a day. And it's because someone said, do you wanna, do you wanna, do you wanna? Of course, I'll meet you. I've got 35 minutes between this one and that one. I'll meet you over here. And Cheryl and I have, met and done walks, and I'm like, I'll find a way to fit it in. And that's great for maintaining the relationship, but it, like you said, it depletes you. And so I've learned a lot more recently where my boundaries are, where now I'm like, I don't want to go out. And I'll maybe have set an appointment. Like even today, I was supposed to meet someone for lunch, and I was like, look, I just physically, I cannot. So let's move it to another date.
That's wonderful. And that's knowing what you can handle, right? And that's knowing, and also you said if someone gets disappointed, well, then so they do. And maybe that's not the right person in your life.
Yeah.
I mean, because people or the right client, maybe Zach, right? I mean, people have to understand that there is this respect you have for yourself too. If we're showing respect to ourselves, then people see that as an example too.
That's a great point.
That's another term like self-respect that I thought, what do you mean? I respect myself. I like myself. Well, liking yourself and respecting yourself are kind of different. And having enough respect for yourself to not overextend yourself and to guard your time and and in relationships and stuff is very important. And people are going to get disappointed, even your closest friends and family. But it doesn't have to be a complete deal breaker. I mean, if you're communicating with people like like with Heather, like I don't feel it today. Can we move it to another day?
Yeah.
Most
Yeah.
people they've been there before.
They're probably like,
been there.
woohoo!
Yeah, they
There's
may be
always
in the
that
exact,
moment.
yeah, but just communicate those boundaries. And if you're making a really, big shift in things, sometimes you do have to have kind of a sit down with those people closest to you or whoever that's going to affect and say, I'm going to start making some changes in these
Yeah.
areas. It's
Right.
not a personal thing to you. It's just, if I don't do this, this is what's going to continue to happen. I can't do it that way.
Right.
There you go. I think that's great. And that one thing recently that's been kind of even coming up more is when people trigger you.
Mhm.
Mm,
People trigger you or a situation triggers you, and what do you do with that? Because
yeah.
I think sometimes that's a warning sign for a boundary that might be getting crossed soon, or some self disrespect someone showing you. And
Mhm.
so, and I think there's a whole process that I've been doing when I feel that way, where really like I have to go inward and be like, what is it about that person or that thing they said or that situation that's really setting me off, like throwing me off?
Mm.
Yeah.
And it's getting me off my center, and it's
Mhm.
really kind of going deep into that thought of like feeling it out, journaling about it, or giving it some prayer or thought, something
Yeah.
that I can say, okay, what I need help. Again, we come back to like wanting help, call another friend maybe, and not saying to
Yeah.
gossip about it, but say,
Right. You don't have to like name names, and you can be like,
Yeah.
and you can like the old joke, like asking for a friend.
Right.
This is
Yeah.
nobody I know, but if you were in this situation,
Yeah.
right. That's always good to reach out to people, but in a kind way, right? But I think that is another thing about drawing boundaries, because there's something there that's kind of triggering maybe your boundary.
mhm,
And to do
Yeah.
some self introspection is not a bad thing at that moment.
And there are certain things that trigger. I mean, usually triggers is usually a bad thing, but maybe don't put
it brings
yourself
awareness. Like,
awareness and don't put yourself in that situation. Then, if you know that
right.
that's going to trigger you,
Yes.
whether it's to get angry or to relapse, from back into an addiction or a bad habit or something, just don't put yourself in that position anymore. It
Right.
sounds easier. It's easier said than done.
It's easier said
Now, if
than
you're
done.
at work, though, that's a challenge, right? No, so when you're at work,
Yeah.
you might not be able to do that. So how do we then deal with it? And it's when it's in a work environment,
Yeah.
a
Mhm.
Yeah.
school or a teacher does that to a young person. And I
Mhm.
think that's when we really have to, maybe we talked about conserve energy. Maybe that's the idea of like kind of being aware, what you said, Heather, knowing it's coming and
Mhm.
saying,
Yeah.
okay, when it comes, I'm just not going to give that much energy. I'm not going to give it much thought, and I'm not going to fuel it. Right? It doesn't have
Well,
when
and
we explode at someone or something. That's not helping us at all.
Yeah.
last summer when I was studying behavioral therapies, like it was geared towards people with autism and finding out what sets them off and identifying what happens around that time to make a change for the trigger. And so it's in the study that we did, it was focused specifically on healing and supporting children with autism. But when I was learning it, I was like, this is for everybody.
Yes.
Like, this is something that you can apply directly, immediately to yourself. And you can identify when you're feeling this way, or when you're feeling unmotivated about something, or you're feeling in any kind of, what is it that needs to be adjusted, or what happened directly before that that caused the change in my mood, or that caused me to not want to do XYZ, or that triggered me, like you said, Zach, to eat the wrong foods or to go back to the addiction. And you have to change the scenario that starts the action.
And also, what can I do better next time? And not to be
Right.
hard on ourselves that maybe we didn't do that the first
I
time,
was,
right? Like we have to
yeah,
be able to, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with Dr. David Hawkins' work, but he talks about the idea of low level vibration versus high level vibration. And shame
Mhm.
and guilt vibrate very, very low. So I kind of want to like share that in the way of that. If you're in shame and guilt about anything, please raise up to courage, or even fear is better
yeah.
than shame and guilt. But to try to just get out of those lower level emotions, because those are when you get triggered and you're in those emotions, we all know how that
And
feels, right?
that's where the boundaries come in. And that's
Yeah.
where you set your boundaries. You find out what are the things that are changing your vibration and you set a boundary.
Yes.
Mhm. And you give yourself, like you said right at the start there, Cheryl, you give yourself some grace.
Mhm.
Mm.
You understand that, it is not on, I'm not always going to not, there are going to be times where I will be triggered by this, or I am going to overextend my boundary or something like that. And
Or it's your family and you're going to be in that situation again. Just protect
Again and
yourself.
again and again, right?
Yes.
A good friend gave me some great advice, and she said when I was feeling kind of low about something that I felt I wasn't kind of my best self. And she said, Cheryl, sometimes you go 10 steps forward and you 100 steps forward and 10 steps back.
Mhm.
And sometimes you go 1,000 steps forward and 100 steps back. It's all a process, and you're all in the movement in your process towards moving forward and achieving and striving, yet you're going to fall back, and that's okay.
Yeah. Awesome. As long as you're picking yourself back up.
Yeah.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
continue to get back up, continue to move forward, and that's about all you can do. If you know a situation is going to trigger you, well, or you're going to get overextended, recognize that and prepare accordingly.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for joining me again and sharing some insights. And I hope this has benefited everybody who's listening. And if not you, then pass it on to someone else that you think could be helping them with that as well. We'll talk to you next time.
You
Yep.
It's good. I'd like
You want to talk about the vibration more?
Yeah,
raising your vibration.
yeah,
Yeah.
dig into that a little more. I can't really speak to that much,
Yeah.
but
How we raise our vibration, that kind of
yeah,
energy.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when it pertained to anything, so okay, let me get this straight. I love that you could edit this, Heather.
Yeah.
So ask me the question and then we'll go
Okay.
into it. Why don't we
All right.
start off like normal and
Yep.
you say, here's the question and da da da.
Okay. Welcome back to Mindful Money Matters. I'm Heather Winandy with Mentor Me Advisors, and joining me today again is Cheryl Romanowski and Zach Youngblood. We talked briefly in the last recording about vibration and raising your vibration. And some people, when they hear words like that, they think, ooh, like voodoo and like like weird witch stories and whatnot. But I totally vibe, and I use that word intentionally. I really dig talking about vibration. It's really important to me. I've, for years, as long as I can remember, vibe off of other people. And so I can feel when people have angst in them, or I can feel like even when someone walks in the door, like I feel an energy coming at me. And it's kind of like, woo, but it's there. These are real things. And I've reviewed a ton of documentaries on vibration. And I actually even make sure that I set frequency music when I sleep. It just changes how your body reacts. So Cheryl is even more well versed in this than I am. So I'm going to hand it over to you, to Cheryl, to give some insight into vibration.
Okay, gosh, sounds like such a big topic, right? Vibration. You first started talking about how you vibe off other people, right? So I think
Mhm.
there's two things to talk about here, right? How we feel vibrations from others, and then how we raise our own vibration. And when I was a young kind of manager back in the day, in this office, and I came to work crabby sometimes, and people were like, Cheryl, your mood affects us. And I was so young in my thought process. I'm like, why would my mood affect you? Like I couldn't even understand
Well, and that's a
vibration.
choice. That's a choice that people make. They allow that.
Yeah, but I didn't even, for me personally, I didn't even realize my vibration, if we're using this word, affected others.
And it
So
extends pretty far.
it extends pretty far. Like we feel like a crabby person coming at us. You know what I mean? The other
Mhm.
day I was turning a right turn and this man looked at me with such anger, and I'm like, dude, like smile.
Lighten up, man.
I'm like, I don't need this today. I'm just smiling right back at you. So this is the idea, like, how do we raise our vibration? I think it's a matter of our what level are we in? You know, we talked in the other video about shame and guilt. I've
Mhm.
mentioned Dr. David Hawkins' work, Power versus Force, this comes from. And so he measured every vibration of every kind of emotion and thing. Things that vibrate the highest at like 1,000 or right under 1,000 are the manifestations, such as Jesus, Muhammad, Baha'u'llah, these type of things, Buddha. Those vibrate the highest. The lowest were shame and guilt.
Mhm.
They're saying even fear, courage, all those things are higher than shame and guilt. So I always think the idea, if I
Fear is higher than shame and guilt. That's interesting.
fear is higher than shame and guilt, yes. So in shame and guilt, we can't make action. That's that woe is me. I'm so low. I'm feeling so heavy, right? And a vibration can feel heavy or it feels light. It feels free. So the idea of raising your vibration, this is such a short time to make a big topic, but just the idea of like, where am I feeling? You know, where do I feel this feeling? I feel my chest and my head and where in my body? And then how can I elevate that? Can I think of a better feeling thoughts? You know, think
Well,
about,
and we talked a few weeks ago, we talked about, I remember a conversation where we said, it's okay to feel the feels, but don't live there. Remember?
yes, exactly. That's exactly it, right? But you need to recognize it. And I love that we're bringing in words like awareness. So be
Mhm.
aware of where your vibration is, you know, what you're vibing, and then try to kind of, you know, strive for a little bit higher and a little bit higher, you know, a little bit higher thoughts, a little more positive thoughts, to not kind of stay there, like in this, for instance, shame and guilt.
Zach, do you have any times that you're recognizing things like this where you're like, I made a conscious decision to make a difference in my mood, and this is what I did to do that? That would be considered vibrating?
Have I?
Yeah. Like
Oh,
where you're like, I'm in a funk and I need to go for a walk, and that changes
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you become more aware of that, the older you get, just more life experience. But yeah, I mean, if I'm in a funk like that, it's usually I need to change the scenery. I need to go for a walk. I need to go for a drive. I need to,
Call a friend.
I need to watch a familiar movie or show or something that I know is going to, raise my mood,
Yeah.
for a different type of term. But yeah, but then there are times where, and I'll admit it, I've had a mild depression for a good part of my life, and it's something that I manage. And there's times whenever you're just really flat, and
Mm.
it's okay to stay there for a little while. You just don't want to live there. And if you do find yourself kind of living there, that's when, okay, maybe I need someone else to kind of give me an idea of what I can do to kind of bust out of this, because
Right.
I don't want to stay here. Um, but yeah, I think
And I
it's
think it's
stuff like that.
a daily practice, right? I mean,
Mhm.
it's daily, it's moment to moment. We have to work on that.
Sure, sure.
Some news can come in that can throw you off. Like anything can happen in a day. But
Right.
I think when you set that intention, the idea of like, all right, and I just say mantras to myself. I love my life. I go around saying that. I
And it
love my
works.
My
It
favorite thing to
really
say
does.
is, I'm awesome. It's like I say it all the time.
Yeah.
But like I too have been in that place of shame and guilt where and this is something else that I shared with someone today, and they like didn't even realize that, but like depression is living in the past, and that's where that like shame and guilt and should have takes place. And
Mhm.
anxiety, where I spend a ton of time, is living in the future, being unsure of what's going to happen. And those things, recognizing those things in yourself and bringing yourself to back to the present moment.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, 100%. And that's where we can change
Sure.
that vibration, right? In the present moment.
Mhm.
Thank you for
I,
mentioning that, Heather.
I
That's
like how you
exactly where the
said,
work
like,
gets done. Yes,
the self-talk is incredibly, it really is incredibly powerful. And it doesn't have to be, like the Stuart Smalley on Saturday Night Live where you're looking at,
But that's awesome. I love that
but
guy.
yeah, but that stuff does work because
It
your
does.
mind, your body will do whatever you tell it to do, pretty
Right.
much, and eventually it'll get there. And I mean, there's some things you need, medicine and stuff for, but yeah, just simply telling yourself and convincing yourself of like this is going to get better, and I feel this way about that, and using expectation type statements, that absolutely helps. I'm a
and if
big,
I could add, there are two things. It was a visualization, right? So visualizing yourself in that thing. There was a current study that was done. I'm sorry, I don't have the exact wording for it, but it was done on basketball athletes. And they had one group that was like practicing really hard. Another one was visualizing it really hard.
Hmm.
but they
I
were
know that
doing.
study.
Yes, and the
Yeah.
visualization, it was amazing how much of a difference that makes. And so I think that's when we talk about the mantras, it also kind of goes along with this visualization. Like I'm sure Heather, when you're saying I'm awesome, you got this visualization of yourself. When I'm
I'm
like, I
like,
love my
total
life, I
high
love my
five.
life. I'm just like,
Yeah.
putting in all that energy to be like, wow, I'm so humbly happy for my life. So
Yeah.
we visualize things as well. I think the mantras and the visualization together are great keys to raise the vibration and
Right.
it's where we need to be.
And like you were saying, Zach, your brain will, your body will follow what your brain tells it to. And
Yeah.
so if you're spending time in the negative, you're inviting more negative in. So in, talking about I'm poor, I don't have enough money, I don't get paid enough, I'm fat or whatever, like those things, you're just perpetuating it.
And
Yeah.
you eat more, I know
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
like
Well,
if
I'm
I'm,
already fat, so
you
what's
know,
another Twinkie?
yeah, what's one more for the road, I mean, that's another, I think, and you mentioned addiction, Zach, I think all addictions kind of work like that, right? Oh, whatever, who cares? But every little bit we do towards, kind of making ourselves feel better really
Yeah.
matters.
Yeah.
And it could just be, it doesn't necessarily have to be a mantra either. It could be, you hear somebody has gotten some bad news or somebody's kind of really talking negatively about a situation. And, your way of handling it could just be some kind of positive spin on it. Like, oh, somebody got a bad health diagnosis or whatever. And it's like, well, I'm going to look forward to them feeling better soon.
Right.
Just something like that.
And yeah, from now that they know, now
Yeah.
they can do something about it.
Yeah. Rather than just wallowing in your own stuff,
Hmm.
which all of us do every now and then. I mean, go back to the don't live there phrase. It'll have you for a little bit, but just don't stay there.
Yeah.
And, you know, so
Sometimes easier said than done, right? I mean,
it is. It is.
this like again, it's a real challenge, and we have to keep putting our wisdom and our strength and our what we've learned behind it. But there's always a possibility to make it look better. I mean, and sometimes you're real low and just to get up a little bit higher. I had a deep depression in my, kind of my late teens, early 20s. And I thought to myself, oh, I can't get lower than this. Oh boy, don't say that to yourself. You
Yeah.
could get lower and lower and lower. And that's the thing was so dark, And then I had this visualization I did for myself where I had to learn to let go, right? To let
Yeah.
go of the anxiety, let go of the fear, let go of these things. And then I would visualize myself going down this dark tunnel, but there was a trampoline. And then it would take me up just another like ladder, you know what I mean? A little
Oh,
rung in the ladder until finally I could see the light. So I'd have to keep like letting go and
oh,
keep then jumping up higher. And it was this total visualization I was able to do to get me out of depression because the light's there and you can live in the
Mhm.
light. But if you're in the darkness, it takes a process, right? You got to kind of let go, let God, let your inner love and your family's love and
Mhm.
medication, whatever it is you may need to get you to the light to live
right.
there.
And you can overcome those things. Like I had years of depression, still anxiety. And it's something that you can train yourself into improving.
Mm.
And something like I mentioned a little while ago is listening to frequency music. I love frequency music. And I just put in there, frequency music for anxiety, frequency music for solid sleep, for body repair, whatever. There's a million of them in there. And it's just calming and it you can feel it in your body, and you can also feel if you recognize in your body where you're feeling the pain or the guilt or the whatever anxiety in your body. You can identify it in a location, then you know that you can move forward with it.
Yeah.
um
And knowing what makes you happy, right? Like knowing what
mhm.
makes you happy so you can spend more time
And
doing
some
that.
people don't. Like I get really intrigued by when I'm like, what would make you happy? I don't know.
If
But
I
you
could
have to
share,
take the time to identify that stuff.
and what you like is sometimes the things that make you happy. If I could share a short story when I was teaching English as a second language in the Netherlands, and I had a little group of people that were learning English, 16, 17-year-olds, and I asked them, simple exercise, just write down what you like. I like the sky, I like the color blue, I like whatever you like. It was amazing how much challenge they had in that.
Oh,
They were just stuck on, they didn't even know what they liked.
wow.
So it's, simple things is like, what do you like? That's usually what you might be good at. And it's usually what can maybe get you out of a funk or, feeling.
Oh, that's cool. I like that exercise.
Well, I just thought of something, reaching back to like one of the first episodes we did about why is it important to have a network.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you find yourself wallowing in your own stuff, you're kind of in the mud and you can't get out. That's where your network your friends, your family, people that
Yeah.
love and care about you can help. That's why you don't want to isolate yourself and think that you can do everything on your own and you don't need anybody.
Right.
Because at some point you will have your turn to sit
Yeah.
there and you won't be able to get out of it. So
And sometimes you don't even need anything said or done. You just need to be with someone else
yeah,
and just spend time and
yeah,
go for a walk or go sit in the yard or do something. And I mean, I'm a nature freak but I'll be in my house for 3 or 4 days straight and then go outside and be like, "Oh my God, I feel so much better."
yeah. And if you're one of those people that you notice someone is kind of stuck there, or they, need your presence or whatever,
Mhm.
and you feel like you want to do something, don't don't do nothing, because doing something is better than just not doing anything.
Good
Right.
point.
Don't try to do the perfect thing, just do something.
Yeah.
Done is better than perfect. It's kind of a
Mhm.
saying I heard a while
I
ago.
could just
So
It's
add
on my wall right there. It says
yeah,
it.
So that's good. And Heather, when you were saying like stay in the house for 3 days, and the thing of by making it more of a daily practice,
Yeah.
you'll kind of push your butt out the door because you're
Every night I
thinking
go to
daily,
sleep,
not
I
every
go,
three
I'm going to
days.
get up in the morning and I'm going to go for a walk. And inevitably, I get up and I go sit in my lazy boy with my coffee and I watch TV. And I'm like, I really should be going for a walk, but I
You know
haven't changed
what?
my own
Maybe
mind
instead of
yet.
saying it's a go for a walk, maybe just step outside. Okay. So
Yeah.
nature is right outside your door. You can
Yeah.
go outside and look in the tree and just feel this connection with nature. And that's a
Yeah.
step forward. So
Yeah.
instead
I
of
need
saying I got
to.
to go for a walk, just say I'm going to step outside with my cup of coffee. The weather is getting nicer here in the Midwest, and just step outside with your coffee. That's all. And maybe you get motivated to take a few steps, maybe not, but you got a little nature in you, which you love.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I need to.
And try maybe making the first thing you do is putting on your walking shoes in the morning, or
Oh,
wear something that you're going to walk
I'll
in.
just have to go
Wear
to
it to
sleep
bed.
in the clothes that I intend on doing that in.
Yeah,
I'll just be in my pajamas walking the
there you
sidewalk.
go.
I almost said walking the street. I'm not street walking.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Thanks for your time on this one. It was a little bit intense of a topic, but I think we turned it around to something digestible, and I hope that you were able to take something away from that. And we'll see you next time.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right.